Lamborghini Miura, the supercar that changed everything. What you're looking at is not just an old Lamborghini. This is the car that basically invented the modern supercar. Before the Aventador, before the Murcielago, before the Diablo, before the Countach posters on bedroom walls, there was this, the Lamborghini Miura. A car so beautiful it looked like it had escaped from an art gallery. A car so dramatic it made Ferrari suddenly look a little bit sensible. And a car so important that 60 years later, Lamborghini is still celebrating it by restoring one of the rarest and most desirable versions ever built, the Miura SV. But the Miura wasn't just a car, it was Ferruccio Lamborghini sticking two fingers up at Enzo Ferrari. It was young engineers sneaking a wild idea past the boss. It was Bertone and Marcello Gandini creating one of the most beautiful shapes ever put on four wheels. And thanks to a certain film called The Italian Job, it became one of the most famous Lamborghinis in history. I had one of these, a yellow one, a little corgi toy when I was a kid. I just loved it. It was just so beautiful. I never ever thought I'd get to sit in one, but then Amari got one. I think it was Rod Stewart's old car, and I sat in that one. So today we're going back to where the supercar really began. This is the story of the Lamborghini Miura. To understand the Miura, you have to understand Lamborghini itself. Ferruccio Lamborghini wasn't born into supercars. He made tractors, very successful tractors. You'll have seen that Jeremy Clarkson is a big fan of Lamborghini tractors on Clarkson's farm. After the Second World War, he built Lamborghini Trattori into a proper industrial business. And like a lot of wealthy Italian businessmen of that time, he bought fast cars, including Ferraris. But the story goes that Ferruccio wasn't happy with his Ferrari. He complained about the clutch, and supposedly Enzo Ferrari told him something along the lines of, "You stick to making tractors, I'll stick to making sports cars." Now, whether every word of that story is exactly true or it's been embellished over the years, it doesn't really matter because the outcome was very real. Ferruccio Lamborghini decided he could build a better Grand Touring car than Ferrari. Not a racing car for the road, not something noisy and uncomfortable, but a fast, refined, luxurious GT car. That led to cars like the 350 GT and 400 GT. Elegant, powerful, beautifully engineered. But they were still fairly traditional, front-engine Grand Tourers. Then some of Lamborghini's younger engineers had a much madder idea. The men behind the Miura's layout were young, ambitious, and clearly not interested in doing things the normal way. I'm going to struggle with these names. People like Gianpaolo Dallara, Paolo Stanzani, and Bob Wallace. Thank goodness, Bob, you saved me. We're thinking about race car technology. At the time, mid-engine cars were already proving themselves in motorsport. Putting the engine behind the driver and ahead of the rear axle gave better balance, better grip, and a much more exotic layout. But doing that in a road car in the mid-1960s, that was outrageous. Ferruccio Lamborghini wasn't especially interested in racing. He wanted refined GT cars, not temperamental racing machines. Well, boy, did he go wrong. So the engineers developed the idea anyway. The first thing they created was not a finished car, it was a chassis, a bare rolling chassis with a transverse V12 engine mounted behind the seats. And in 1965, Lamborghini showed that chassis at the Turin Motor Show. No body, no glamorous finished shape, just the mechanical idea. And people went mad for it. Customers started putting orders in for a car they hadn't even seen yet. Imagine that today. Imagine the shock you'd get when that new Jag turns up at your door. A company shows a bare frame, an engine, a gearbox, and a promise, and wealthy clients start reaching for the checkbooks. That tells you how radical this thing was. Once Lamborghini realised they had something special, they needed a body, and that job went to Bertone. More specifically, the design was handled by Marcello Gandini, who would later become one of the most important car designers in history. Gandini was still young, but what he created with the Miura was extraordinary. Low nose, curved wings, tiny cabin, beautiful proportions, the famous eyelashes around the headlights. The Miura wasn't aggressive in the modern sense. It wasn't covered in vents, fake carbon wings, slashes and angry LED lights. It was very, very sensual, delicate, but underneath that beautiful body was a 3.9 litre V12 sitting sideways just behind your head. That combination was what made it so shocking. Beauty at the front, madness in the middle, and danger waiting at the back. When the finished Miura appeared at the 1966 Geneva Motor Show, it was a sensation. It wasn't just another expensive Italian sports car. This was the car that changed the rules. The name Miura came from a famous Spanish fighting bull bloodline, and that fitted Lamborghini perfectly. Ferruccio Lamborghini was a Taurus. He used the raging bull as the company badge, and many of Lamborghini's greatest cars would later take their names from bullfighting history. Not a big fan of bullfighting, I must say. Not a big fan at all, but I like the names. Miura was not just a pretty name, it gave the car a personality. It sounded exotic, dangerous, expensive, a bit untamable, and that's exactly what the car was. Because while the Miura looked beautiful, it wasn't some soft luxury cruiser. This was a machine that demanded respect. A V12 behind your head, no modern safety systems, no traction control, no stability control, no computer deciding whether you were being a bit too enthusiastic with the throttle. Just you, the accelerator, the chassis, and your own talent. And when you run out of talent, you'd know about it. The Miura P400. The first production version was the Miura P400. The P stood for posterior, meaning rear, referring to the engine position. The 400 referred to the engine size, roughly 4 litres. It produced around 350 horsepower, which in the 1960s was serious business. This was a time when a normal family car might have had 50 or 60 horsepower. So 350 horsepower in something this low, this light, and this exotic was absolutely outrageous. Top speed was often quoted around 170 miles per hour, depending on gearing, conditions, and how brave the driver was. And remember, this was in the 1960s. Tyres weren't what they are today. Brakes weren't what they are today. Roads weren't what they are today. No, they were flipping heck of a lot better. And the idea of crashing one of those at full chat doesn't bear thinking about. But that was part of the Miura's appeal. It wasn't safe and sterilised, it was alive. This is why the Miura matters so much in history. Today, when we think of a supercar, we usually think of mid-mountain engine, a low wedge or dramatic shape, a loud exotic engine, 2 seats, expensive badge, poster car status, and the sense that normal people should probably just stand back and look at it. The Miura basically created that recipe. Before the Miura, super fast road cars were usually front-engined Grand Tourers. Ferrari Daytona, Aston Martin DB cars, Maseratis, big engines in the front, long bonnets, elegant cabins. The Miura flipped the idea. It took the drama of a racing car and gave it a road-going body. That's why people often call it the first true supercar. You can argue about technicalities. You can mention earlier mid-engine road cars. You can split hairs all day long. But culturally, the Miura is the one. It's the moment the supercar arrived. In 1968, Lamborghini introduced the Miura S. The S version brought more power, more refinement, and a few improvements to make the car slightly more civilized. Power went up to around 370 horsepower. Inside, the S could be fitted with more comfort features, including things like electric windows and air conditioning, depending on specification. Now, don't get carried away. This was still a Miura. It wasn't suddenly a calm, sensible daily driver, but it showed that Lamborghini was developing the car, improving it and learning as it went. Then came the ultimate factory version, the one collectors really obsess over. The Miura SV, or Super Veloce, arrived in the early 1970s. This was the final major evolution of the Miura. More power, wider rear track, wider rear tyres, improved suspension, a more muscular stance. and those famous smooth headlight surrounds, losing the earlier eyelashes which I liked that had become such a signature of the P400 and the S. Now some people love the eyelashes, some people prefer the cleaner, tougher look of the SV, but from a collector's point of view, the SV is generally the king of the normal production Miuras. Lamborghini built only around 150 Miura SVs, making them seriously rare. Lamborghini itself describes the SV as the final evolution of the first supercar. And that brings us to the modern restoration story. The 60th anniversary restoration. For the Miura's 60th anniversary celebrations, Lamborghini's heritage department, Polo Storico, unveiled a restored 1972 Lamborghini Miura SV. And this wasn't just a quick repaint and a wipe over with a posh microfiber cloth. This was a serious factory-led historical registration. The car was presented at Annantara Concorso Roma La Dolce Vita dell'Automobile in Rome in April 2026. Lamborghini says the Miura SV was returned to its original configuration after 3 years of work and detailed historical research by Polo Storico. That's the bit that matters, because with the cars at this level, originality is everything. A Miura SV is already rare, but a Miura SV restored by Lamborghini's own heritage department using factory records, production sheets and original specifications, that's a different level of collector appeal. I wonder if Tom Hartley Jr. will be getting that one. It wouldn't surprise me if he don't get it one day, if not tomorrow. Lamborghini says the car came into Polo Storico at the end of 2023 in a configuration that did not match how it originally left the factory. So they went back through the documentation and corrected it. This is where the nerdy details become very expensive. They corrected things like the front wing grills, the fins above the door handles, the rear louvers, the centre lock hubs, the exhaust tips, even interior details such as the hazard lights, the steering wheel, the handbrake lever, and air conditioning preparation. And then there's the colour. The restored car was returned to its original colour combination. Luce del Bosco on the outside, Sinope trim on the inside. In plain English, thank you. I appreciate that, but it's a bit too late now. In plain English, a rich brown exterior with a mustard style interior. And somehow, because it's a Miura, it works. On an ordinary car, sounds like a Volvo to be honest, brown over mustard might sound something like your granddad ordered after a long lunch in 1972. On a Lamborghini Miura SV, it looks like high art. That's the magic of this car. It can wear colours that would ruin almost anything else. This restoration also tells you something about the collector car market, because today provenance matters. It's not enough for a car to look right, it has to be right. The right chassis, the right engine, the right colour, the right trim, the right tiny details that only 3 people on earth would notice. And unfortunately for those owners, 2 of those 3 people might be standing next to the car at a concourse event with a clipboard. That's why factory heritage departments like Lamborghini Polo Storico are so important. They don't just restore cars, they certify the story. And on something like a Miura SV, that story can be worth a fortune, because when you're dealing with cars that can be worth millions, the difference between looks nice and factory correct, documented, certified is not small. It can be huge. This is where classic cars become like fine art. The paint colour is provenance, the trim's provenance, the paperwork's provenance, the restoration history is provenance, and the Miura has now reached that level. It's no longer just a used Lamborghini, it's a cultural object, a museum grade machine, a rolling sculpture with a V12 in the middle. But the Miura's fame didn't only come from motor shows, collectors and rich Italian industrialists. For many people, the Miura became immortal because of one film, The Italian Job. If you've seen Rosanna Brazzi driving his Lamborghini Miura, Days Like This by Matt Monro, it's coming out the TV, you almost sway with the car. As you're watching, as he's driving, You're almost swaying and changing gear. It's a beautiful thing. I've seen that film so many times. In fact, I only watched it the other day. The original 1969 film opens with one of the most famous car scenes ever made. A bright orange Lamborghini Miura driving through the Alps. No dialogue, no complicated setup, just a beautiful Lamborghini Miura. Stunning scenery and that sense of effortless 1960s glamour. It's one of the greatest car introductions in cinema history. The Miura glides through the mountain roads like a spaceship from another planet. Then, of course, the film shocks you. The car enters a tunnel, there's a crash, a bulldozer appears, and the Miura is pushed over the edge. For decades, plenty of people believed the actual hero car had been destroyed. But that wasn't the full story. The car used for the beautiful driving shots survived. Another already damaged car was used for the wreck scenes. Lamborghini's Polo Storico later confirmed the identity of the surviving Italian job Miura and restored and certified it in 2019 for the film's 50th anniversary. And that's brilliant, because the Miura from the Italian job wasn't just a film prop. It was basically a rolling advert for Lamborghini. A bright orange mid-engine V12 supercar blasting through the Alps at the start of one of Britain's most famous films. The scene did more for the Miura's image than almost any brochure ever could. It told the public exactly what the Miura was. Fast, beautiful, dangerous, European, expensive, and, if you didn't watch it, just a little bit doomed. Perfect. The Miura was eventually replaced by another Lamborghini icon, the Countach. And this is where Lamborghini changed direction again. If the Miura was sensual and beautiful, the Countach was outrageous and shocking. The Miura was curves, the Countach was angles. The Miura was elegance, the Countach was aggression. The Miura looked like a car a film star would drive to the Riviera. The Countach looked like something that had landed from another galaxy. But without the Miura, there is no Countach as we know it. The Miura proved Lamborghini could build something that didn't just compete with Ferrari. It could embarrass Ferrari. It could create a new category. And Lamborghini has been living off that philosophy ever since. Every wild Lamborghini since then carries a bit of the Miura's DNA. Countach, Diablo, Murcielago, Aventador, Revuelto, they all owe something to the Miura. The idea that a Lamborghini should not merely be fast, it should be an event. One of the reasons the Miura remains so loved is that it sits at the perfect point between beauty and danger. Modern supercars are incredibly fast, but they're also incredibly clever. They have computers, sensors, drive modes, carbon brakes, stability systems, active aerodynamics, and tyres developed by people with more brain power than most government. Well, that's an insult. Don't know why I wrote that. The Miura had none of that. It just had charm. It had charm, it had drama, it had a V12, and it had consequences. Early cars were known for front-end lift at high speeds. The engine and gearbox arrangement was compact but complex. Heat, noise, fuel smell, and mechanical rawness were all part of the experience. And that's the point. The Miura came from a time before supercars became perfect. It came from a time when they were still slightly mad. You didn't just drive a Miura, you negotiated with it. And if you were lucky, talented and respectful, it let you enjoy the ride. Today Miuras are among the most desirable classic Lamborghinis in the world. And the SV is the one that really gets collectors excited. Why? Because it has everything. The original supercar status, the V12 engine, the Bertone design, the Gandini shape, the rarity, the final evolution specification, the Hollywood connection through the Italian job, and now increasingly factory certified restorations by Polo Storico. That's a very strong cocktail. It isn't just a car you buy because you fancy an old Lamborghini. It's a car you buy because you want one of the foundation stones of supercar history. It's like buying an early Picasso, if Picasso had carburetors, and occasionally tried to set on fire. And that's why properly restored, correctly documented Miuras command such enormous money, because you're not just buying performance. By modern standards, plenty of hot hatchbacks would give an old Miura a fright and a run for its money. But you're buying importance, you're buying beauty, you're buying the beginning of the supercar as we know it today. That's why Lamborghini restoring a Miura SV for the 60th anniversary matters. It isn't nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's Lamborghini reminding the world where the whole legend began. Before the scissor doors went up on the Countach, before the V12 became a Lamborghini religion, before every footballer, rapper, tech billionaire and lottery winner wanted a raging bull in the driveway. There was the Miura, a car created by a company that was still young enough to take risks, designed by people who didn't know they were creating history, built in an era when rules were fewer, courage was greater, and common sense was apparently optional. Well, I know that's still today. 6 decades later, Lamborghini is still going back to it, still restoring it, still certifying it, still displaying it at concourse events, still treating it as one of the crown jewels. Because it is. The Lamborghini Miura is not just one of the most beautiful cars ever made, it's one of the most important. It changed the layout of the supercar. It changed Lamborghini's image forever. It gave the world one of cinema's greatest car scenes. And it proved that sometimes the wild idea in the corner of the workshop is the one that becomes a legend. The Miura is not perfect. And that's exactly why people love it. It's gorgeous, flawed, dangerous, historic, rare, and completely unforgettable. And when Lamborghini restores a Miura SV 60 years later, it's not just restoring a car, it's restoring the moment the supercar was born. Here's the question. I know the answer already. If money was no object, would you have the elegant original Miura with the famous eyelashes? Actually, yes, I think I would. Or the ultimate, tougher, rarer Miura SV? Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you love rare cars, billionaire toys, forgotten classics, and machines with ridiculous stories behind them, make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.